So Reddit got thinking, all right, they're paying attention. That's what our alien looks like when it's pondering things. All right, we know Steven's paying attention. Let's really, really try to convince him. So it turns out Steven's on the board of a fantastic not-for-profit called Donors Choose, which is why I have this awful facial hair right now. It's a fundraiser, don't ask. Donors Choose is fantastic because unfortunately, most public school teachers have to buy their own supplies. Which is really sad, actually, for living in one of the, well, the richest country in the world. But that said, Donors Choose lets these teachers, this is actually a teacher named Mr. T, create a project where he says, oh, I need X, Y, and Z supplies, and it's going to cost this much money. You can make a donation to help this specific project. And Reddit decided to create their own Colbert fundraiser. This would get his attention, surely. If they could beat the previous record setter, which was Hillary Clinton, she had raised about $30,000. Reddit, shouldn't surprise you, beat it actually in just a few hours. But that wasn't enough for Reddit. And again, the Colbert folks were really savvy. They put out a letter addressed, this is from Steven, that went out to the internet, but specifically to Reddit, dear Redditors, and I won't read it all, but it was basically chock full of memes. His writers did a very good job in terms of speaking to the community and showing that they were members of the community. He even sent us a photo of him drinking out of the special Colbert Reddit alien mug that I sent him, which was really exciting. And then sure enough, the actual rally was announced. Now they had planned this in the past, but when they saw the reaction on the internet, they really thought that something special could happen. And it turns out, spoiler, a few 100,000 people showed up in DC and the rally was a tremendous success by all accounts. But it was not all good for Donors Choose. We actually took their site down. Reddit, and Reddit has a special way about doing this because their biggest concern was not so much that the site was down. They understood they were getting a traffic surge. Their concern was knowing what was happening. That is, like, asking for the nerd porn about what was going on. And so Oliver from the tech team at Donors Choose actually came out and gave everyone a full download as to why the site was down and what had failed. And this was wonderful. They loved this transparency. The executive board of Donors Choose came on and did another Ask Me Anything interview where they took candid questions from the Reddit community and in real time answered them. CTO, CEO, everyone from the company was willing to get behind it and really get the community thinking that they cared. 10 days later, in a lot of press about the rally, all this, et cetera, we hit $280,000. Which was pretty cool. Reddit wanted to match the amount of money that they had donated to direct relief for Haiti, and so they really topped that one. That was tremendous. So at that point, this was maybe halfway to the rally. Reddit thought, you know what, we can go for $500,000. And Steven promised to do an interview, one of those Ask Me Anything interviews if Reddit raised over $500,000 for Donors Choose. Well, at this moment, Reddit has raised $575,000 for Donors Choose. Now again, this is a community of people. They aren't totally anonymous, but they're sort of quasi-anonymous. They have silly usernames like FluffyBunny26. These are people who don't know each other by their names in real life, but they are just as much of a community as any of the ones that we're experiencing in MeetSpace. And all it takes is giving them the right kind of tools, giving them the right kind of platform where when something can spring up, they can have the power to go create their own Reddit, to reskin it, to create a community that they can control and take ownership of. Because if people don't feel like they are owning, if they're controlling what's going on, then they're not going to participate. All the work that they put into in order to put a bunch of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air Sonic remixes is because they know that they are contributing something that their username is attached to a community. And this is sort of what finally inspired the whole Breadpig thing, and the thing that gets Christina and I out of bed every morning, mostly on time. And it's that, all right, we talked about XKCD. They had this great idea for making a book. We figured, all right, we can publish it for you because the publishing industry is so backwards, they're going to give you a minority of the profits even though you deserve most of them because you've done all the real work. And we sold 30,000 copies so far, and that was really cool. But what was really special was we learned that, you know what, Randy is an interesting guy. And man, this has been so much of a Randall Munroe love fest, but it's true. He's really an awesome dude. And he wanted to get behind the fact that Reddit gives away all of its publisher profits. And so for his book tour, he actually used it as a fundraiser for Room to Read, which is an organization we work with to promote global literacy. So the idea here is a pretty simple one. If we can get more literate people in the world, we can sell more books to them when they grow up. And so we're really just growing market share by doing this. It's pretty straightforward. But what the Room to Read people really understood was that Randall Munroe, and to some extent Breadpig, but especially XKCD, had such a passionate community that all they had to do was work a little harder to show them where that money was going. This is the original school. This was the first XKCD school that we built. They sent us photos of the original. Here's the new one. Actually, Christina and I got the chance to visit it And Christina spent over a month traveling through all the locations in Asia where we're going to be building education centers with Room to Read.
To sort of give you a perspective, to get to the school, we took a 10-hour sleeper bus, on which we almost died. And then we took a 5-hour minivan ride through this like mud. And then they told us that because it was wet season, the mud was too thick for the minivan to pass through any further. So we had to get on the back of like a straight up Oregon Trail style like tractor that we spent the last hour on, like dodging branches and fording rivers and getting cholera and stuff like that to get to the school. So the fact that Room to Read is able to take the money generated from the internet to build a school really in the middle of nowhere in Laos and help this whole community is really awesome.
Yeah, and so we were honored to be able to actually go and visit. And until that happened, we were getting feedback in the form of the photos. And so we saw the way the community was building the school, and we shared this with the XKCD community. And so most people, I think, who got the book at some point, or certainly who were on the book tour, knew that what they were doing was actually turning into something very real on the other side of the globe. And school's now in session. The old classrooms had a few holes in the roof, made going to class during the rainy season tough, but they still did anyway. The new one is awesome. To say the least. But XKCD reached out to his community and said, listen, one more thing. You guys have already done so much great work by supporting me for all these years. XKCD pays his bills because of merchandise that fans buy. The book is just one other piece of merchandise. But we wanted to make them feel even more involved because really this is not happening without that community. None of this would be happening without that community. And so there's a dedication plaque that goes in every school. And we actually got the XKCD community to solicit ideas for what would be on the plaque. And there's a fantastic Plato quote that you can check out on the internet at breadpig.com. But that's the thing that we always try to keep in mind is that, you know, these communities can be used for all kinds of things, good, bad. You know, there's the trolling, and then there's the spontaneous altruism. But on the whole, geeks are actually pretty fantastic people, especially, and I'm not just saying that because we are, maybe a little, but the core of it, the internet is actually a fairly decent place. And like in real life, most of the people you meet are actually fairly decent people. It's a shame that, you know, the stories you get to hear all the time are the outliers. They're the really depressing, awful stories about the assholes. But that's because they get lots of page views. At the end of the day, though, most of the internet is actually pretty awesome. And we're just thrilled to be a very small part of that. And that's actually us at the school with the plaque. So we're not making this up. That's actually where I got my cool bracelet. But now's the time for questions. So I think Tim's coming up, and we'll answer anything you guys have about the internet. So thank you very much.
Sorry, we'll answer any question about the internet. Anything you want to know.
Tim Berners-Lee. Did I get it?
So I'm Tim. I'm the other half of ROFLCon. You'll be hearing from me later today. But I decided to just come up and help moderate the questions and all that. So I guess we'll just open up the floor if there's anything that people are interested in. Oh, sorry. We'll get to you next.
Hi, guys. Mike Rose from MJM. For Christine, hi. For Christina and Tim, what was the hardest part about pulling ROFLCon together? It sounds a lot like herding several groups of cats. And really a challenge to anyone who wants to create an event from scratch. What did you find was the biggest stumbling block to getting it done?
I think the biggest stumbling block was definitely that neither of us knew what we were doing the whole time. But that also ended up being the biggest advantage, because I think everything that we did came off as really genuine. Like, for example, one of the funniest pieces of praise that we got was that the whole conference, the aesthetic looked really sort of homemade, like the internet in the 90s. And this was in reference to these cardboard signs that, like, we didn't print out signs to mark which registration lines were which. So about 6:30 a.m. morning of, one of us tore apart a piece of cardboard and wrote on Sharpie, like, guests, press, you know, and literally just, like, taped them to the wall. And that wasn't planned, but people really sort of enjoyed that look, I guess.
Right, and you can sell amateurness as lo-fi.
Yeah, exactly. It was on purpose.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I would say one of the big difficulties, and I guess maybe this is inherent in any kind of beginning enterprise, is that it's always kind of a big lie to start, right? Where, you know, the
big lies, actually.
Right, the whole nature of ROFLCon was, okay, guys, we're going to get the whole internet to show up. It's going to be great. But it all depended on this idea that guests would eventually say yes, and they'd actually turn up, and they would actually be real people, and they wouldn't be creepy. So kind of what we did is we just kept rolling along with it, and it actually ended up working out well. But kind of the big hump to jump over initially was that. But I thought it was nice because it kind of worked with kind of the nature of propagation online, right? We sort of got one person who led to another person who led to another person, and it was kind of easier as we went along, which I'm still kind of surprised about. But
no, we're shocked. But honestly, I think the most important thing is that because we didn't know what we were doing, we didn't have any plans, so we were very flexible. As a result, plenty of punches were thrown throughout, and even now when we have subsequent ROFLCons, like this last ROFLCon, I ended up stealing a projector from my friend's office that was hidden in his floor tile by breaking into his office after climbing up 3 flights of stairs in rollerblades because this was the only way I could get a projector. And, sometimes you just have to do that. And as long as you don't take yourself too seriously and sort of are prepared to have fun with it, and again, sort of be transparent with the internet about like, yeah, sometimes stuff breaks, and this is funny because stuff breaks on the internet too. Let's just make fun of it instead of fixate on how it's broken while we fix it. So I think that's really how we deal with it.
Yeah, one thing we found actually, I think also, like there's some kind of design things that we did with ROFLCon that actually ended up being quite successful, even though it was sort of provisional when we got started. Like one of the things is normally when you plan a conference, you're like, okay, there's going to be these 5 sessions, and then we're going to slot guests into those sessions. We had no idea who was going to turn up, so we actually went in the reverse direction, which is to invite everybody that we thought was cool and then come up with a schedule afterwards. And for internet events, actually, that ends up being an awesome way of doing it because you can actually kind of sculpt it around what guests would do best. And so that actually ended up working in our favor as well. But.
Hey, guys.
Hey.
I have 2 questions. First, about altruism on Reddit. Like, it's definitely fascinating. I love seeing like that guy, the old guy that was at the American Legion, the birthday party that Reddit users threw for him.
4chan too.
Sorry?
To 4chan's credit, they started that one.
Oh yeah.
Shocking, but.
I guess I wonder, like with things like that, it would seem like that would be the best place for like a brand that has resources to be like, yeah, we can help this person, we can like come in. Although I wonder if it would take away from some of the like the organic nature of, yeah, we want to help this person just because we're the internet and we can do it. So that's my first question, like would it make sense for brands to come in on situations like that? Second is about trolling, and I know like a lot of trolling issues now with privacy, and like there's lawsuits going on about like comments on YouTube and stuff like that. Are you guys, do you think Reddit is worried now about anonymity? Like, do you think we'll start to see people getting in trouble for, because you almost need trolling to create the story and create the argument. So, like, is there an issue, or could we see an issue potentially with feds or police or people suing Reddit users that are commenting, like making arguments?
People have tried. We do not give out that kind of information. I mean, really, there's no information we can give them. That's one of the advantages to just asking for a username and a password. And so unless you've got a whole ton of good reasons to somehow be able to divine that, or to demand that IP address, which I can't remember ever happening. Yeah, we've never been forced to give up any of that stuff. And fortunately, people will realize that nothing on YouTube, or nothing in YouTube comments is worth caring about.